I wanted to sit down and really think about what I wanted to say regarding the Amazon Lord of the Rings Tolkien teaser trailer that dropped last week. My immediate response was one of, "You're kidding, right? You're not going to give us one damn scene?" And that's why I took some time to think about it. They actually showed us pretty much everything I and a whole lot of other people were deeply concerned about when it comes to their so-called the Rings of Power. What do I mean when I say that? Well, the fact that we didn't get one rolling landscape, one fortress, one throne room, not even close-ups of weapons, of armor, not one damn thing from this show, I think tells us a lot more than Amazon intended to. What has Amazon been publicizing? Well, they are slow rolling all of the huge changes they have made to Tolkien. It was a few weeks ago when we all learned that hobbits who do not belong in the Second Age are not a people. They're actually some random multicultural super diverse tribe that just call themselves hobbits. So there you go. You can identify as a hobbit in Amazon's Second Age. We also got news, which is news to a lot of people who actually read the books, that Isildur has a sister. And it's pretty safe to say that a lot of roles that were filled by men, very specific men in the books, are now going to be given to women. Not because it's good for the story, not because it's a new take on it, but because Amazon has a playbook that allows them to rewrite whatever classic or story they want just to hit their ESG score ratings. And if you saw what that did to Amazon's adaptation of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, you know exactly what we should be expecting from The Lord of the Rings. So no, this isn't going to be one of those videos where I say this is stupid and look at how dumb they are and talk about the frame rate. There's plenty of other videos that you can go watch that'll talk about that, and they're all, in my opinion, pretty darn right. No, this video has to do with the backstory that I think Amazon is desperately trying to bury. Much like we saw with the Wheel of Time, the shills are already out, and they are championing the things that none of us as fans of the original work wanted or asked for. And in the case of Wheel of Time, actually did great harm to the storytelling. What they did achieve, though, were corporate diversity, inclusion, representation, checkboxes. I'm not going to say it again. I don't have any problem with the best person being cast for a role. However, when we are talking about something like Tolkien, all you need to do is look at the world that Peter Jackson created based upon very specific adherence to Tolkien's original works. Yes, believe it or not, there are idiots out there calling the masterpieces that Peter Jackson created not diverse enough. There are people with nothing but time on their hands to throw rocks at everything good that has been built before for no other reason than to get a couple minutes of fame. That's their right, but it's also my right to call bullshit on it. And if you want to light up my comments section and call me whatever the latest woke-a-rati bullshit stuff is for not going along with your idiotic destruction of Western civilization and canon, go right ahead. Those same people seem to have a problem with history as it actually occurred. Well, we're going to go through the history as it actually occurred of the production of Amazon's Tolkien project. And when the show debuts, September 2nd of this year, I want all of us to be informed and armed with facts. So when all of us get called all of those same names that we always do when we don't like a property that's been deconstructed, we can very calmly and clearly point to why we don't like it. Or if there's somehow a miracle occurs and it's a good thing, we will also be aware of what obstacles had to be overcome to make something good happen. Consider this part 2 of my ongoing Amazon Lord of the Rings series video series. In this, we are going to cover factual events that occurred during the production that were reasons long ago to be deeply concerned with what a lot of us really hoped was going to be something that was true to Tolkien, true to Tolkien's ideals, and somehow managed to come just marginally close to what Peter Jackson did with his 3-movie trilogy. Notice I deliberately left out The Hobbit. And what really sucks about all of this is that I think trying to even hit something like The Hobbit is going to be such a wide miss for Amazon that a lot of us are going to be deeply disappointed. Now, anybody can make up any kind of crazy stories they want. I happen to have a view on this, but here is why I have the pessimism and the sadness, one could say, as to what they are going to very likely do with Amazon's Lord of the Rings of Power. Now, if it's one thing Peter Jackson's Lord of the Ring trilogy got right, was the characterizations, the backgrounds, the overall artistic feel of the production. Who was responsible for that look? Someone named John Howe. In fact, John Howe was responsible for re-illustrating the original Tolkien maps for The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, as well as the Silmarillion between 1996 and 2003. He was responsible for producing countless illustrations for many, many books related to Tolkien, the style of Tolkien, the maps of Tolkien. John Howe is in fact recognized, along with Alan Lee, as the 2 single most prominent and accomplished, respected Tolkien Middle-earth artists working in the world today. Which again is undoubtedly the reason why Peter Jackson picked them to be the lead artists for his Lord of the Rings trilogy. Undoubtedly, that impressive body of work was the reason why Amazon brought John Howe on to their production of their Lord of the Rings property. Now, what's truly baffling is that Amazon released John Howe without a real announcement, or there's really not a lot of information out there as to what happened and why he was just chucked out the door. What OneRing.net reported was that he was told his services were no longer needed. Now, no one is saying that John Howe had the monopoly on Tolkien's vision. However, there is a reason why he was consistently and repeatedly, along with Alan Lee, chose to illustrate anything related to Tolkien's works. The question we should all be asking is, who did Amazon think could do a better job than Howe or Lee? And by better job, what exactly does that mean? Now let's talk about the engagement of the so-called Tolkien estate gatekeepers. Now, what is that? That's a person who is there to make sure that the story of J.R.R. Tolkien is true to the books and true to the spirit by which Tolkien wrote them. This is supposed to be somebody with a broad, accepted scholarship in Tolkien, that is a respected figure who can speak not just for that Tolkien estate, but hopefully for us as fans of Tolkien's works. In July 2019, it was announced that Tom Shippey was going to fill that capacity. What happened between that time and April 2020? Well, if you remember, in March of 2020, we got reports that the entire writer's room for the show had been fired. Was Tom Shippey part of that shakeup and fallout from it? Was it because of Shippey's insistence in staying true to J.R.R. Tolkien's work and tone and beliefs? We don't really know, except that Tom Shippey was gone in under a year. That information came out through a couple different sources, but seems to have occurred when Shippey was talking to the Tolkien Society of Germany. Now, try as I might, I cannot find the names of those so-called Tolkien lore experts that were supposedly there after Tom Shippey left. I will say this, if they are the same type of lore experts that were there for Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, this is all going to end very, very badly. Now, any production, whether it is a radio show, a television show, a webcast, hell, even a YouTube video, is only as good as the sum of its parts. But like so many other things, it begins in good writing, in my opinion. Those of you who have found me through my Wheel of Time reviews know the pain, agony, disgust that we felt watching an extraordinarily politicized, idealized, non-adaptation that had the name Robert Jordan on it. Wheel of Time was a platform to insert representation, neo-Marxism, intersectional feminism, identity politics. The characters on screen in no way resembled those detailed in Robert Jordan's Eye of the World story. And furthermore, fundamental world building around there being two genders who used and experienced magic very differently in Robert Jordan's world had been tossed out the window for a more woke, inclusive narrative. As I have said many times in my Wheel of Time reviews, that simply destroyed the entire basis of that show pretending to be an adaptation. Now, people are saying, was Wheel of Time a warm-up for what they're going to do to the Lord of the Rings series? Well, what do we know? What we do know is that in March of 2020, the entire writer's room for the entire show was fired. Going to repeat that, the entire writer's room for Amazon's $1 billion Lord of the Rings prequel series was fired. Now, bear in mind, that is about a year into production of season 1. And there is every indication that still at that time, season 1 was to have included 20, not 8 episodes. Now, going back to articles that appeared at the time of the official announcements as to who the season 1 writing team was, these were the names that were put forward. Jennifer Hudson, who worked on Breaking Bad. Jason Cahill, who had worked on The Sopranos. Justin Double, who had worked on Stranger Things. Now, those three people were not just writers, they were also producers. It's interesting if you go to those writers, producers, whatever you want to call them, their IMDb pages. In the case of Jason Cahill, he is listed as executive producer for season 1, episode 1, and episode 2 only. And for some reason is also listed as a season 2, episode 1 producer as well. However, his name is not on any of the other 6 episodes for season 1. The same is true for Jennifer Hutchinson and Justin Doble. Just episode 1 and episode 2 of season 1, and then for some reason, episode 1 of season 2. Also, the former HBO production chief Bruce Richmond, who actually oversaw Game of Thrones, was on board with Amazon as an executive producer. Same thing. He's only credited for 2 episodes of season 1. In addition, former Robot executive Lindsay Weber, who did 10 Cloverleaf and left J.J. Abrams' production company in late 2018 to join Amazon specifically for this show. Same thing. Credited for only 2 episodes in season 1. It's important to note with her, she actually worked very closely with the 2 identified showrunners for this, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, together on a really crappy Star Trek movie called Star Trek Beyond. No, I'm not going to go line by line on this, but what I'm doing is I'm showing you evidence that something dramatic happened, and that by the rumored reports and now what we're seeing for credits that are out there in the industry, people got canned in a big way and replaced. It wasn't just the writers, they also fired a veteran production designer by the name of Richard Heinrichs. His resume includes being production designer for Tim Burton for Sleepy Hollow, as well as the 2001 remake of Planet of the Apes, multiple Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and Marvel's Captain America: The First Avenger. He was replaced by Ramsey Avery, who worked on 10 Cloverfield, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, as well as Star Trek Into Darkness. Now, why should you care about a production designer? Because here's where things keep getting weird. The credits for Amazon's first season for that production designer are all over the place. Heinrich gets the credit again for, you guessed it, episode 1 and 2 of season 1, but then the rest of it is Avery for the remaining 6 episodes. So that's enough. I think we can tell something really huge happened, and it happened across the board in this production, just like when we thought, when those rumors of a huge shakeup creatively occurred. And it's fascinating if you go and look at sources out there for who was actually given credits for writing season 1, you see virtually all of the same names that were indicated as being writers now being given executive producer credits for season 1. What does all that mean in weird-ass Hollywood? I don't know. All I know is, to me, it shows us that whatever we get out of season 1, and I think a lot of us have a lot of very low expectations, and I'd say rightfully so, it is not only going to probably be deviating greatly from not just Tolkien's spirit and what we've seen from Tolkien products in the past, like the Peter Jackson movies, but also I would say it will be jarringly uneven after the first 2 episodes. So what, in fact, do we know about who was directing the few episodes we are getting from Amazon's The Ring of Power series? We know we are getting 8 episodes, not the original 20 that was promised when production first started. The first 2 episodes of Amazon's Tolkien project will be directed by J.A. Bayana. Now, do you know that name? What has this person done? Well, in 2007, he directed a horror film called The Orphanage. In 2012, he did a drama called The Impossible. In 2016, he did a fantasy film called A Monster Calls. And in 2018, he did the science fiction adventure film Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, which is the 4th installment of the Jurassic Park film series. Now, depending on who you talk to, that movie did not do very well critically. I don't know a lot of people that liked it who were in the audience. However, If you look out there, they're trying to spin it that despite the crappy writing, he was actually a great director. I don't know how that works, but that's what these articles are saying. Now, there are 2 other directors that were responsible for producing the remaining episodes of Season 1 of The Rings of Power. We have an episode count for those 2 individuals, but it is not really articulated in what order they did them. Wayne Yip was indicated to have directed 4 out of the 8 episodes. When you go to look up who Wayne Yip is, he is most notably connected to Doctor Who from the BBC. In fact, he did 2 episodes during the Peter Capaldi run and 1 during the Jodie Whittaker run. It is worth noting that it was only in March of 2021 that it was indicated that Yip was going to be taking over 4 episodes. Given the elapsed time and churn with this production, it is my opinion that there is a lot in the can that was filmed that Amazon simply chose to redo. Now, his career accomplishments before that, I would say, are less than impressive. He did some work on the show Badlands, a couple other things that I have never heard of or didn't care for at all. You're more than welcome to go look up who this individual is. I'm not trying to disparage their character. I'm just saying not exactly a deep resume for something as important to a lot of us as Lord of the Rings, which I will take this moment to do the insert, which I think is relevant. This is exactly the kind of thinking that we saw behind Amazon's Wheel of Time by bringing in Rafe Judkins. Will we get the same results? I don't know, but what I do find concerning is that you are giving more than half of your season 1 to someone like Yip. Why? The remaining 2 episodes of Amazon's Rings of Power series will be directed by a Swedish-French director. Charlotte Brandstrom is a director with a lot of experience doing television shows, particularly in France. It was around 2012 when she started to make appearances on American television in shows such as Chicago PD and Grey's Anatomy. Also of note, she did 2 episodes of The Witcher Season 1. And while also working on this Lord of the Rings series, she was doing Jupiter's Legacy. So there you go. That's who's directing the 8 episodes of Season 1 of The Rings of Power. Quite honestly, the only name that I find encouraging is that Charlotte Brandstrom. This appears to be somebody who is a cool hand under fire, who has been around the block many, many times, and also has direct experience directing a fantasy show. So I just gave you a whole lot of information, and I tried to make it concise. With things like this, it's important to get the dates and the people and the actions identified and then put evidence to it so that we don't look like freaking morons. Anyone can stand around and call things names. That's what the people on the other side do to us when we don't like something all the time. And I know it doesn't make any difference that we take the high road. They're still holes. They don't love the source material. They didn't love Wheel of Time. They don't care what destruction is done. They simply jump on whatever the latest content bandwagon is, ride it off a cliff, and then jump onto the next content bandwagon. Is there anything we can do to stop that backlash against us, the people who actually made an intellectual property successful? Probably not. For whatever reason, current year Hollywood actually delights in ignoring and then belittling us for not liking their mediocre reimaginings. Those of us in the Wheel of Time crowd, you know exactly what I'm talking about. As a matter of fact, there are still articles coming out now praising Amazon's Wheel of Time adaptation for going against the books, for saying that the concept of two genders is a very 1990s backwards way of looking at things. Also, there are articles in Salon celebrating what Rafe Judkins did in making up the bullshit lesbian relationship between the Amerlin Seat, Suan Sanche, and Moiraine Damodred. Why? Because that's all they do. They just parrot whatever the latest talking points are, they get their whatever little tiny check for being a shill, and then go home and eat cat food. Does that make me sound petty? Does that make me sound like an asshole? I don't care anymore, because these people we are dealing with are not just intellectually dishonest, they are also emotionally immature. Their strong opinions and dedication to these adaptations and reimaginings last only as long as they seem to trend on Twitter. And once the rest of us are left in the smoking crater of something that we loved, whether it's Star Trek, Doctor Who, Star Wars, The Wheel of Time, and now very, very likely Tolkien, they will laugh and move on, get a soy latte, and then consume next product. I'm sure I'd get a lot more views if I was just this raging dick who called all these people who love to destroy things names. Maybe that will happen once we see what happens with The Lord of the Rings on Amazon, but in the meantime, I would like to focus on having a mildly adult conversation about what actually did happen with this production. What are the lessons to take away from Wheel of Time? Never stop telling the truth. Never stop calling these creatives out for their changes, in particular those that are nonsensical, representation, forced diversity, full of intersectional Marxism, or other talking points that seem to benefit a much larger global narrative that is being pushed in destroying Western canon. Yeah, this was a long video, and it took me a couple times just to get it to the place where we're at right now. Tell me what you think in the comments section below. What are your thoughts and feelings about Amazon's Lord of the Rings? What did you think of the teaser trailer? And then in particular, some of the information that I've put forward, along with evidence, what does that make you think about what Amazon is doing in holding back even one visual hint of what we're going to get when season 1 is finally released? As ever, this is Salty Texas C. I am Corey DB. Thank you so much for watching the video. And as ever, I also want to shout out my wolf brothers and sisters. Their names appear on every video I make. They are channel members, and I would love to have you join if you'd like to. Just look on my community section. Regardless, I hope you have an awesome week.